I turned an underground parking garage into my zombie fortress. The first thing you need to understand is that I didn't choose the parking garage because it was safe. I chose it because everyone else thought it was a death trap. My name is Marcus Delaney, 34 years old, former structural engineer for a commercial construction firm in downtown Portland. The kind of man who spent his career calculating load-bearing capacities and ventilation requirements for buildings most people never thought twice about. When the Cascadia outbreak hit, when the infected started pouring through the Pearl District like a tide of broken humans, I didn't run for the hills. I didn't barricade myself in a penthouse or raid a sporting goods store. I drove my truck 3 levels underground into the Morrison Street parking structure and sealed the ramp behind me with 8,000 pounds of precast concrete barrier. That was 41 days ago. I'm recording this because someone should know what happened down here, what we built, what it cost. The garage spans 4 subterranean levels beneath what used to be a mixed-use commercial building. 212 parking spaces across 90,000 square feet of reinforced concrete. 6-inch slab floors, 12-inch bearing walls, 2 vehicle ramps, 1 pedestrian stairwell, and a single elevator shaft that I disabled on day 1. The ventilation system runs through mechanical channels I can control manually. The fire suppression system gave me access to 8,000 gallons of stored water. I knew all of this because I'd consulted on the building's retrofit 18 months earlier. When I pulled in on the morning of September 14th, the radio was cycling through emergency broadcasts that had already started repeating. The infection moved faster than anyone modeled, faster than the CDC projections, faster than the National Guard cordons that collapsed within 6 hours of deployment. I watched 2 people get torn apart on Burnside Street from my rearview mirror before I turned down the ramp. I wasn't alone. There was a woman already inside, level 2, crouched between a Honda Civic and a support column with a tire iron in her hands. She swung at me before I could speak. "Stop! I'm not infected." She didn't lower the iron. Her eyes were wide, blood on her left sleeve. Not hers, she told me later. Her name was Dana Okafor, 31, pediatric nurse at OHSU. She'd been walking to her car when the first wave of infected came through the ground floor lobby above us. She'd run down instead of up. Smart instinct. "How do I know you're not bitten?" she asked. I pulled up my sleeves, turned around, showed her my neck, my ankles. "I'm clean, are you?" She showed me the blood on her sleeve. A man grabbed me on the stairs. His jaw was dislocated, hanging open. I hit him and the blood. "Did it get in your eyes? Your mouth? Any open cuts?" "No." "Then you're fine. Contact transmission requires mucous membrane or wound exposure." I read the WHO brief before the servers went down. She lowered the tire iron by 2 inches. "You're an engineer?" "Structural. This building is my project file from last year. I know every pipe, every conduit, every load point." That was the beginning. Not of safety. We were far from safe. But of something that resembled a plan. By the end of that first hour, we heard them above us. Not on level 1, the ramp barrier held, but in the building overhead. Footsteps that didn't sound like footsteps. A rhythmic, dragging. The sound of weight hitting walls without any attempt to avoid them. The infected don't navigate. They propel. They move toward stimulus without spatial reasoning, and the sound of my truck engine had drawn them into the lobby like iron filings toward a magnet. Dana looked at the ceiling. "How thick is that?" 6 inches of post-tensioned concrete. They're not getting through. What about the stairwell? I'd already thought about that. "Help me move that dumpster." She picked up the tire iron again, not to swing at me this time, and we got to work. We sealed the stairwell door with the maintenance dumpster, 2 wheel chocks, and a length of steel cable I found in the utility closet on level 3. The door itself was commercial grade, 18-gauge hollow metal in a pressed steel frame. It would hold against body weight, but if enough of them piled against it, the frame anchors would eventually pull from the concrete. I gave us 72 hours before that became a problem. I was wrong. It took 9 days. But I'll get to that. The first night underground was silence and inventory. Dana and I didn't trust each other yet. We worked in parallel, not together. She took level 2. I took level 3. We agreed to meet at the ramp junction between levels every 4 hours. I cataloged what the garage offered. 17 vehicles remained parked across the 4 levels, most locked. 3 with keys still in cup holders, people who'd fled on foot during the initial panic. I broke into 11 of the remaining 14 using a slim gym I fabricated from a windshield wiper arm. The contents: 2 flats of bottled water in a minivan, a case of protein bars in a gym bag, 3 first aid kits, 1 comprehensive, 2 basic, a sleeping bag, a child's backpack with crackers and juice boxes, jumper cables, a full toolkit in a contractor's pickup, 2 flashlights, 1 headlamp, a hunting knife in a glove compartment, a half-full propane tank, and a portable camp stove in the bed of the pickup. Dana found less on her level, but contributed something more valuable: medical knowledge and a clinical calm that I didn't possess. She inventoried the first aid supplies with practiced efficiency, separating what was useful from what was trivial. "We have enough antibiotics for maybe 1 serious wound infection," she told me at our first rendezvous. "After that, we're relying on not getting hurt." Noted. "How's the water situation?" 8,000 gallons in the fire suppression system, but it's treated with corrosion inhibitors. Not immediately toxic, but not ideal for sustained consumption. The bottled water gives us maybe 5 days at rationing. We need to find a way to filter the system water. She nodded. "I've purified water in field clinics. If you can get me activated charcoal and a container system, I can build a gravity filter. There are carbon filters in the HVAC system on level 4. I can strip them." That night, our first night, I didn't sleep. I sat against the wall on level 3 with a hunting knife across my knees and listened. The sounds from above were inconsistent. Sometimes silence for 20 minutes. Then a sudden burst of movement. Multiple bodies slamming against walls, against each other. No vocalizations that sounded human. Low, wet sounds. Guttural clicking that didn't match any physiological behavior I understood. At 3 a.m., something hit the stairwell door. Once. Hard. Then nothing for another hour. At 4 a.m., Dana's voice echoed down the ramp. "Marcus? Here. I can't sleep either." She came down and sat on the opposite wall. We didn't speak for a while. The fluorescent emergency lighting cast everything in a pale green wash. Battery-powered units that would last another 48 hours before dying. After that, we'd be relying on flashlights and whatever power we could generate from vehicle batteries. "How long do you think this lasts?" she asked. "I don't know." The broadcast said military containment was underway, but the broadcasts also said the infection rate was manageable. They were wrong about that. My sister's in Seattle. I didn't have anything useful to say, so I said nothing. She texted me at 6 a.m. yesterday. Said things were getting bad on Capitol Hill. Then nothing. Cell towers might be down. Yeah. She pulled her knees up. Maybe. The silence between us wasn't comfortable yet. It was the silence of two strangers who understood that proximity was now a survival variable. We needed each other, not emotionally, not yet, but mechanically. Two people could watch two directions. Two people could work in shifts. Two people could hold a barricade. I didn't know yet what Dana would become to me. I didn't know what this garage would become. I only knew the door at the top of the stairs was holding, and that had to be enough for now. On the second morning, I established the electrical system. The contractor's pickup had a deep cycle marine battery in addition to its starter battery. Someone who used it for tailgate power, probably. I disconnected both, carried them to level 3, and wired them in parallel to create a small power bank. Using the inverter I found in the truck's toolbox, I could run low-draw devices. LED work lights, a phone charger, the camp stove's ignition system. It wasn't much. But in the underground dark, light meant sanity. Dana spent the morning working on water filtration. She'd taken the carbon filter media I'd pulled from the HVAC unit on level 4 and packed it into a 5-gallon bucket with holes drilled in the bottom. Gravel from the decorative planters near the elevator lobby served as the pre-filter layer. She ran the first batch of fire suppression water through the system 3 times before she was willing to taste it. "It's not great," she said, handing me a cup, "but it won't kill us." I drank. It tasted like rust and concrete dust. Better than dehydration. Significantly. By noon on day 2, we had a functional, if primitive, base camp established on level 3. I chose that level deliberately. Level 1 was too close to the surface. Level 4 was a dead end, with no secondary egress. Level 2 had more vehicles, but also more sightline obstructions due to the column spacing. Level 3 offered the best combination of defensible geometry and access to the ramp system for potential escape. I was explaining this to Dana when we heard the horn. A car horn, short blasts, coming from the level 1 vehicle ramp outside the barrier I'd placed. We both froze. "Someone's out there," Dana whispered, "or something leaned on a horn." That was deliberate. That was a pattern. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. SOS. Someone was alive outside my barrier and signaling for help. I grabbed the headlamp and the hunting knife. "Stay here." "No." She picked up the tire iron. "I'm coming." We moved up the ramp together, staying close to the walls. The barrier I'd placed was a set of Jersey barriers. Precast concrete traffic dividers that had been stored on level 1 for a renovation project. I'd used the pickup to push them into position across the vehicle ramp, creating a wall roughly 4 feet high and 8 feet wide. Not impenetrable, but enough to block vehicle access and slow anything that tried to climb over. The horn sounded again from just beyond. Then a voice, male, ragged, desperate. "Please, I can see the barriers. I know someone's in there. They're behind me. Please." I looked at Dana. She looked at me. "We can't just," she started. "I know." I climbed onto the hood of a sedan parked near the barrier and looked over. A man stood on the descending ramp, maybe 30 feet away. Mid-40s, business casual. Dress shirt torn, no jacket. Blood on his face, but he was moving normally. Behind him, at the top of the ramp where it met street level, I could see 3 figures standing in that awful stillness the infected adopt when they haven't locked onto stimulus. They weren't pursuing him, yet, but they were close. "Are you bitten?" I called down. No, I swear. I've been hiding in the building across the street. The lobby collapsed. I had nowhere else to go. Please." "How'd you know someone was here?" "I saw your truck go down 2 days ago. I've been working up the nerve to cross the street." Dana appeared beside me on the sedan hood. She studied him with clinical focus. "Roll up your sleeves. Show me your neck." He did. Even from 30 feet, in daylight filtering down the ramp, I could see clean skin. No marks, no discoloration. The three figures at the top of the ramp shifted. One turned its head, that unnatural rotation they do, like a bird of prey tracking motion. "Move the barrier," Dana said. "Now." His name was Peter Calloway, 46, real estate attorney. He'd been in his office on the 4th floor of the Carlisle building when the outbreak swept through downtown. He'd watched from his window as the street below became unrecognizable in less than an hour. He'd hidden in a supply closet for 2 days, rationing a bag of trail mix and 2 bottles of sparkling water his assistant kept in her desk. The building's HVAC attracted them, he explained, sitting on the concrete floor of level 3, drinking our filtered water in small, desperate sips. The fans, the vibration, they started filling the lobby on the first night. I could hear them in the stairwells, going up and down. No pattern, just movement. "How did you get out?" Dana asked. "Fire escape on the west side. It drops into an alley. I waited until early morning. They seem less responsive to visual stimulus in low light. I made it across Morrison Street in maybe 15 seconds. Longest 15 seconds of my life." I studied him while Dana checked him over more thoroughly. He was shaking, not from cold, but from adrenaline crash. His hands trembled so badly he could barely hold the water cup. His shoes were expensive leather loafers, completely wrong for the situation. His shirt was soaked through with sweat and grime, but his eyes were clear. His speech was coherent. His pupils reacted normally to light. "He's clean," Dana confirmed. "Elevated heart rate, mild dehydration, early malnutrition, but no signs of infection." Peter looked between us. "You two? You've been down here since the beginning?" "Since day one," I said. "We've fortified the lower levels. The upper structure is compromised, but the subterranean garage is defensible." "How many others?" "Just us. Now 3. He processed this. I watched him absorb the information. Watched the flicker of hope and disappointment cross his face simultaneously. 3 people in a concrete bunker. Not exactly a rescue operation. "What's the plan?" he asked. I didn't have a plan. I had a system, a functional survival infrastructure built on engineering principles. Water, shelter, power, perimeter security. But a plan implied trajectory, direction, end game. "The plan is to stay alive long enough for someone to establish a corridor out of the city," I said. "Military, FEMA, somebody. Until then, we maintain the garrison and expand our capabilities." "Garrison." Peter almost laughed. "You sound military. Engineer. But the principles overlap." He nodded slowly. "Okay, what can I do? I'm not handy. I push paper, but I'll do whatever you need." I assigned him inventory management. Every item we possessed needed cataloging. Quantity, condition, location, consumption rate. Peter's legal mind proved surprisingly suited to the task. Within a day, he'd created a ledger system using the back of legal pads he'd brought from his office, tracking our resources with meticulous precision. It was Dana who first suggested we think bigger. "We can't just survive," she said on the evening of day 3, as we sat around the camp stove eating heated canned soup I'd found in the back of a catering van on level 1. "Surviving is a short-term posture. We need to build something sustainable." "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we stop thinking of this as a bunker and start thinking of it as a settlement. We have space, we have structure, we have water. What we need is food production, expanded power generation, and, if we're going to take in more people, a system for integration. More people means more resource drain, I said. More people means more labor, more skills, more security coverage. She set down her cup. You can't do this alone, Marcus. 2 people can't maintain a perimeter this size indefinitely. We need numbers. I looked at Peter, who was carefully writing in his ledger. He glanced up. She's right. 3 isn't a community. 3 is a target. They were right. I knew they were right. But opening our doors meant opening our vulnerability. Controlled intake, I said finally. Screening protocol, skills assessment, quarantine period. Donna nodded. Now you're thinking like a builder. Days 4 through 7 brought the first real test of our infrastructure. The emergency lighting batteries died on day 4, plunging levels 2 through 4 into absolute darkness beyond our small perimeter of wired LED work lights. The darkness changed everything. Sound traveled differently in the pitch black. Psychological weight settled over spaces that had felt merely austere before. I spent day 5 running a lighting circuit using LED strip lights salvaged from the decorative fascia in the elevator lobby. Powered by our battery bank, recharged by a crude alternator system I built using a car engine, a belt drive, and a hand crank. It took Peter and me working in shifts, 20 minutes cranking, 40 minutes rest, to generate enough charge for 4 hours of low-level illumination per day. We need solar, I told Dana, or a generator. Solar's above ground. That's a problem. The rooftop of this building has a commercial solar array. I designed the structural mounts. If I can access the roof, you'd have to go through the building. Through them. She was right. The building above us had become a hive. We could hear them constantly now, the irregular rhythm of infected bodies moving through corridors, bumping against walls, occasionally erupting into sudden violence against each other. The infected didn't cooperate. They didn't organize, but they congregated around stimuli, and our vibrations, however minor, kept drawing them into the structure overhead. On day 6, Peter made his first significant contribution beyond bookkeeping. He'd been examining the building's utility connections, the points where electrical conduit, water pipes, and communication lines entered the garage from the street, and discovered something I'd overlooked. There's a utility tunnel, he said, unrolling a building diagram he'd found in the maintenance office. Runs from the mechanical room on level 4 to the adjacent building. It's for shared infrastructure, electrical feeds, fiber optics, water main connections. I stared at the diagram. He was right. A 4-foot diameter utility conduit connected our garage's mechanical room to the basement of the Morrison building next door, a 12-story commercial tower. That's an exit route, I said. Or an entry route, Donna added. What's the condition of the Morrison building? None of us knew. But the tunnel represented something critical, a pathway that bypassed the surface entirely. If the Morrison building was clear or clearable, it doubled our accessible space. If it was compromised, the tunnel was a breach vector we needed to seal. I'll go, I said. Not alone, Dana insisted. Someone needs to stay with the perimeter. Peter raised his hand. I'll watch the perimeter. I'm useless in a tunnel anyway. On the morning of day 7, Dana and I entered the utility tunnel. 4 feet in diameter, crawling space, concrete-lined, dry, dark. We moved with headlamps, the hunting knife in my belt, the tire iron in Dana's hands. The tunnel ran 80 feet, straight and level, before terminating at a steel access panel bolted from our side. I pressed my ear against the panel. Silence. Should we? Dana whispered. I removed the bolts. 6 of them, corroded but functional. The panels swung inward on stiff hinges, revealing a basement mechanical room nearly identical to our own. Boiler systems, electrical panels, a maintenance workbench. Empty, quiet, no sign of infected presence. We cleared the room, then the adjacent corridor, then the basement level. The Morrison building's underground level was a storage and mechanical space. No parking, no public access. The stairwell doors were closed and intact. The elevator was stopped between floors, its shaft sealed. "This is clean," Dana said, her voice carrying the first note of genuine relief I'd heard from her. "For now, we need to verify the upper floors aren't sending anything down." We sealed every possible entry point on that basement level. Stairwell doors reinforced with furniture, elevator shaft blocked with a filing cabinet wedged into the gap. Then we returned through the tunnel to report to Peter. "We just doubled our space," I told him. He smiled for the first time since we'd pulled him over the barrier. "What's over there?" "Room to grow." Day 8 brought the first new arrivals since Peter. Not one person, 4, a family. The Nguyens, David, 42, former restaurant owner. His wife Lynn, 39, accountant. Their teenage daughter Mai, 16. And David's mother, who we called Banoy, 71. They arrived at the vehicle ramp at dawn, having traveled on foot from the Lloyd district across the river. David carried a crowbar. Lynn carried a backpack stuffed with canned goods. Mai carried her grandmother, who couldn't walk faster than the infected could shamble. I heard them before I saw them. David's voice calling out. Controlled but urgent, identified them as human before I reached the barrier. The screening process Donna and I had designed was simple but non-negotiable. Visual inspection for bite marks or wounds. A 12-hour quarantine period in an isolated space on level 1. Then integration if no symptoms appeared. David submitted to it immediately. Lynn hesitated, not from resistance, but from exhaustion so profound that comprehension came slowly. 12 hours, Dana explained gently. We watch you. If you're clean, you join us. It's for everyone's safety. My mother-in-law needs water now, David said. She'll get it. You'll all get food and water during quarantine. You just can't interact with the general population until we're sure. David nodded. That's fair. That's smart. I set up the quarantine zone in a corner of level 1, away from the stairwell door, away from the barrier. A tarp for privacy, water, food, a bucket for sanitation. It wasn't dignified, but it was safe. During their 12 hours, David talked through the tarp. He told us about the Lloyd district, how the bridges had become killing corridors, how the infected seemed drawn to the river crossings by the vibration of vehicle traffic. He'd watched the Burnside Bridge become impassable within hours. He'd taken his family across the steel bridge at 4 a.m. on day 3, moving in absolute silence, stepping over bodies that may or may not have been truly dead. The east side is worse than here, he said. No underground structures. Everything's low-rise, wood frame. The infected go through walls over there. I watched one punch through a residential door like it was cardboard. Punch through? I asked. They don't feel pain. They don't stop. They hit something and keep hitting it until it gives or they break themselves apart. I saw one tear its own arm off trying to get through a chain-link fence. Didn't slow down. Just kept going with one arm. Dana took notes. Every piece of behavioral intelligence was valuable. The 12 hours passed. No symptoms, no fever, no pupil dilation, no aggression response. The Nguyens were clean. I watched them integrate into our small community and felt something shift in the garage's atmosphere. Peter showed David the inventory ledger. Lynn immediately began organizing the food supplies with a precision that put our system to shame. Mai helped her grandmother settle into the sleeping area we'd established on level 3, arranging blankets with a tenderness that made Dana turn away, not from discomfort, but from some private grief she hadn't shared. 7 people now, in a space designed for cars, not lives. That evening, David found me on level 4, where I was working on the ventilation system. The air underground needed constant circulation. Without it, CO2 would accumulate and we'd suffocate in our own fortress. "I want to help," he said. "I ran a kitchen for 15 years. I know food preservation, portion control, meal planning. Let me manage nutrition." "You're hired." He grinned. "No pay negotiation?" "Payment is not dying. Fair terms." He extended his hand. I shook it. And in that small gesture, a handshake in a dark parking garage beneath a dead city, I felt the first architecture of community forming. Not family, not friendship, something more functional and more fragile. Mutual dependence sealed by a shared understanding that alone we were all already dead. By day 12, I'd completed what I called the infrastructure map, a comprehensive diagram of every system our underground settlement relied upon. Water filtration on level 4, food storage and preparation on level 3, sleeping quarters on level 3 east, medical station on level 2, perimeter security on level 1, the utility tunnel to the Morrison building, which we now used for storage expansion and as an emergency evacuation route. We'd also developed protocols. Watch shifts. 4 hours on, 8 hours off, rotating through everyone except Banoi. Water rationing. 2 liters per person per day, adjusted upward for anyone on physical labor assignments. Noise discipline, no shouting, no running, no metal-on-metal contact that might transmit vibration through the structure to the infected above. This last rule proved the hardest to enforce. Not because people were careless, but because silence in a concrete box erodes psychological stability faster than hunger. On day 12, I made the decision to access the Morrison building's upper floors. Not for living space, we had enough below ground, but for resources. A 12-story commercial building meant office supplies, vending machines, break room kitchens, possibly medical supplies, if any tenants had first aid stations. I organized a 3-person team. Myself, David, and Dana. Peter would manage the perimeter. Lynn would maintain the quarantine station. Mai would watch her grandmother. We entered through the utility tunnel at 6 a.m., moved through the cleared basement, and approached the stairwell. I'd reinforced the door on our previous visit, but hadn't opened it since. Pressing my ear to the metal, I heard nothing. "Level by level," I whispered. "Clear each floor before advancing. Any sign of infected presence, we retreat immediately. No heroes." David hefted his crowbar. Dana had upgraded from the tire iron to a length of steel rebar with a taped grip. I carried the hunting knife and a fire extinguisher, not as a weapon, but as a visual and auditory deterrent. The infected reacted unpredictably to sudden stimuli. A blast of white chemical cloud might buy seconds. I opened the stairwell door. The air inside was stale but breathable. Emergency lighting had long since died. Our headlamps cut white beams through absolute darkness. The stairwell rose above us. 12 flights of concrete and steel railing, each landing a potential ambush point. Level 1, clear. A lobby of polished marble and dead security screens. Glass doors to the street, intact but smeared with handprints, some of them bloody, dried to black. Beyond the glass, I could see the street, empty in the early morning light. A crashed delivery truck, 3 bodies on the sidewalk that weren't moving. "Don't linger," Dana murmured. "Level 2, clear. An insurance company, cubicles and conference rooms, vending machines, 2 of them still stocked." I used the crowbar to open both. Chips, candy bars, bottled water, energy drinks. We loaded our packs. Level 3, clear. A tech startup's open floor plan. Break room with a full refrigerator. Everything spoiled now, the smell overwhelming. But the pantry yielded canned coffee, powdered creamer, boxes of tea, sugar packets, and a case of sparkling water someone had ordered for a party that never happened. Level 4, not clear. I smelled it before I saw it. That particular odor, biological decay mixed with something chemical, something acidic that didn't belong to normal decomposition. Dana identified it first. "Infected metabolism byproduct," she whispered. "They're here, or were recently." The stairwell door to level 4 had a narrow window. I shined my headlamp through it and saw the corridor beyond. 5 of them, standing motionless in the hallway, not moving, not reacting to the light. Their heads were bowed, bodies swaying slightly. "Dormant state," Dana breathed. "I read about this in the WHO updates before communications dropped. They enter a low-activity phase when stimulus is absent." "Can they be woken?" "By sound, vibration, proximity." I looked at David. He shook his head slowly. We had what we needed. 3 floors of supplies. That was enough. We retreated in silence, sealing the stairwell behind us. Day 15. Our population grew again. This time not from the vehicle ramp, but from the utility tunnel itself. I was doing my morning check of the Morrison basement when I heard tapping on the far wall, the exterior wall facing an adjacent utility corridor that serviced the block's underground infrastructure. 3 taps, pause, 3 taps, deliberate. I didn't respond immediately. I pressed my ear to the concrete and listened. Then a voice, muffled, female, desperate but controlled. "If someone's there, please respond. We've been following the utility corridors from Pioneer Square. We can hear your machinery. Our hand-crank charging system, the vibration. Someone had tracked it through the underground infrastructure." I returned to the garage and gathered Dana and David. We discussed it, briefly, urgently. The ethical dimensions were clear, but the security implications were not. Anyone in the utility corridors might be infected, might be hostile, might be leading others, living or dead, directly to us. "We have a protocol," Dana reminded me. "Screening, quarantine, integration." "Our protocol assumes they arrive at the barrier, where we control the encounter. This is different. They're already inside our perimeter, or 1 wall away from it." David crossed his arms. "We can't leave people to die, because they found us through an inconvenient entrance." He was right. I knew he was right. I returned to the Morrison basement with Dana and a pry bar. We located the access panel in the exterior wall, a maintenance hatch for the interbuilding utility corridor that ran beneath the street. I'd noted it during our initial survey, but hadn't prioritized it. "Stand back from the hatch," I called through the wall. "We're opening from this side. If you're armed, put your weapons on the ground." Okay, we're stepping back." I pulled the hatch. It swung open to reveal a narrow concrete corridor, perhaps 3 feet wide, lit only by our headlamps spilling through the gap. 2 women stood 10 feet back, hands raised. One tall, mid-20s, wearing a rain jacket and hiking boots. The other shorter, heavier, perhaps 40, in scrubs similar to Dana's. "I'm Carla," the younger one said. "This is Joyce. She's an ER nurse. We've been underground for 3 days, moving through maintenance tunnels from Pioneer Square." "How many of you?" "Just us. We started with 4, lost 2 at the Yam Hill Corridor Junction. There was a breach, infected in the tunnel system." That information hit me like ice water. Infected in the underground corridors. That meant our assumption of subterranean safety was compromised. "Where exactly was the breach?" I asked. 2 blocks south. A collapsed section of sewer line opened into the utility tunnel. They were coming through the gap, maybe 8, 10 of them. "Moving or dormant?" "Moving, actively hunting. They responded to our flashlights." Donna and I exchanged a look. If infected had penetrated the utility corridor system, our tunnel to the Morrison building was a potential breach vector. We needed to seal, monitor, or fortify that connection immediately. But first, Carla and Joyce. Visual inspection. Clean. No wounds, no discoloration, no behavioral anomalies. We brought them through, sealed the hatch, and escorted them back to the garage for quarantine. Joyce turned out to be an emergency room nurse with 12 years of trauma experience. She and Dana connected immediately, the professional shorthand of medical workers creating an instant bond that transcended the awkwardness of strangers meeting in crisis. Carla was a graduate student in environmental engineering. When she heard what I'd built, her eyes lit up with understanding rather than confusion. "You're running a closed-loop system," she said. "Water reclamation, manual power generation, controlled ventilation. This is a designed ecosystem. Crude but functional." "I can help." My thesis was on sustainable micro-infrastructure for disaster resilience. 9 people now, and for the first time, I had someone who spoke my language, someone who could help me build not just survival but sustainability. The cost of their arrival, however, was the knowledge that our fortress had a soft underbelly. The tunnels that gave us reach also gave threats access. Something would have to be done. Carla and I spent days 16 through 19 redesigning the tunnel system security. She brought theoretical knowledge I lacked, understanding of flow dynamics, contamination barriers, monitoring systems. Together, we engineered a series of checkpoints within the utility tunnel connecting our garage to the Morrison building. The first checkpoint was a physical barrier. A steel grate welded from rebar and car frame components, hinged and lockable, positioned 20 feet into the tunnel from our side. Anything coming through the tunnel would hit this gate before reaching our mechanical room. The second checkpoint was an alarm system. Fishing lines strung across the tunnel at ankle height, connected to a cluster of tin cans filled with gravel. Primitive, but effective. Any movement through the tunnel would announce itself. The third checkpoint was the most important. We sealed the Morrison basement's exterior hatch permanently. Welded it shut using a car battery, jumper cables, and a coat hanger. An improvised spot welder that Carla devised from her engineering background. The access point Carla and Joyce had entered through no longer existed. "What if others come through the corridors looking for us?" Peter asked when we reported the modification. "Then they find a sealed wall," I said. "That feels wrong. So does being overrun in our sleep." Peter didn't argue further, but I saw the moral discomfort in his expression. He was a man of contracts and obligations. Leaving potential survivors without access violated his professional instincts. I understood. But I couldn't protect people I hadn't met at the expense of people I'd promised to keep alive. This tension, between open-door compassion and closed-system security, would define the next phase of our existence, more than any infected threat could. Day 20 brought a different kind of challenge. Food. David's rationing system was precise, but precision doesn't create calories from nothing. Our scavenged supplies from the Morrison building extended our runway, but 9 people consuming approximately 2,000 calories per day burned through canned goods faster than anticipated. 3 weeks at current consumption, David reported at our evening meeting, a practice we'd established on day 10, gathering all adults around the camp stove for status updates. Maybe 4 if we cut portions. Cutting portions means cutting work capacity, Dana countered. People on watch shifts need adequate nutrition or they become liability, slow reactions, poor judgment. Then we need new supply sources, I said. Carla raised her hand. What about the building above us? You said the infected are occupying it, but are they on every floor? Unknown. We cleared 3 floors in the Morrison building, but found dormant infected on the 4th. What about this building, our building, the one directly above the garage? I'd avoided this. The structure directly overhead was where the heaviest infected concentrations seemed to be. The stairwell door, our original barricade point, still held, but the sounds above had only intensified over 3 weeks. More of them, drawn by our presence below. It's too dangerous, I said. What if we could access it without using the stairwell? Carla pulled out the building diagram Peter had found weeks ago. Look, the elevator shaft. You disabled the elevator on day 1, but the shaft itself is a vertical corridor. If we can access it from level 4, we could potentially climb to specific floors and enter laterally. I studied the diagram. She was right, technically. The elevator shaft rose through all 4 underground levels and continued up through the 12 stories above. If we entered at level 4 and climbed using the maintenance ladder inside the shaft, we could potentially reach any floor. The elevator doors on each level could be forced open from inside the shaft. The risk is noise, Dana said. Climbing in a metal shaft, opening doors. If the infected are in the corridors. We go at low activity hours, Carla suggested. Early morning, when they're in dormant state, silent approach, grab what we can, get out. It was a risk, a significant one. But starvation was also a risk, and it operated on a predictable timeline. I'll think about it, I said. Think fast, David replied. 3 weeks isn't long. Day 22. I made the decision. We would enter the building above through the elevator shaft. The preparation took 2 days. I fabricated climbing equipment from tow straps and carabiners found in vehicles. Carla designed a noise-dampening wrap for our boots, strips of carpet padding duct-taped to the soles. David prepared empty packs for supply transport. Dana assembled a medical response kit in case of injury during the climb. The team was myself and Carla. 2 people, minimal noise signature, maximum technical competence. Everyone else would maintain ground-level operations and stand ready at the shaft access point on level 4 in case we needed rapid extraction. At 4 a.m. on day 24, we entered the elevator shaft. The interior was exactly as I remembered from the building plans. Steel guide rails, concrete walls, a maintenance ladder bolted to the east side. The elevator car was jammed between the ground floor and level 1 underground. I disabled it by cutting the hydraulic line on day 1, dropping the car to its lowest point. We climbed over the car's roof and began ascending. The shaft was darker than the tunnels. Our headlamps created harsh circles of light against the concrete, illuminating dust motes and the occasional cobweb. The silence was extraordinary. A sealed vertical tube that isolated us from every other sound in the building. until we passed the ground floor. Between the first and second floors, I heard it breathing, not ours. Coming from beyond the elevator doors to my left, the first floor corridor. Heavy, irregular exhalations, multiple sources. The dormant infected, resting in the darkness beyond a 2-inch steel door. I looked down at Carla on the ladder below me. She'd heard it too. Her face was pale in the headlamp glow, but her jaw was set. She nodded upward. Keep climbing. We passed the first floor, the second, the third, where we'd found dormant infected during our Morrison building exploration. The fourth. On the 5th floor, I stopped. I'd chosen the 5th floor because building plans indicated it housed a corporate cafeteria, a tenant amenity serving floors 4 through 6. If the space was intact, it could contain commercial food storage, dry goods, canned items, condiments, possibly even sealed beverages. I pressed my ear to the elevator doors. Silence, no breathing, no movement. Carla handed me the pry tool, a modified tire iron with a flattened edge. I inserted it between the doors and applied slow, steady pressure. The doors resisted, then separated with a sound like a whispered sigh. I froze, listened. Nothing. The corridor beyond was empty. Emergency signage hung at the far end. Exit, glowing faintly green from residual phosphorescence. Office doors lined both sides, all closed. At the corridor's midpoint, a glass-walled space revealed the cafeteria. Tables, chairs, a service counter with shuttered serving stations. We entered, moved in silence, reached the cafeteria kitchen. It was untouched, sealed behind a locked service door that Carla picked using a straightened paperclip. A skill she'd learned, she whispered, from a misspent undergraduate phase. Inside, a walk-in pantry with industrial shelving holding number 10 cans of vegetables, fruit, sauce, bags of rice, boxes of pasta, commercial quantities of cooking oil, flour, sugar. A chest freezer, dead and warm now, its contents spoiled. But the dry goods were perfect. Months of food for our group. We loaded our packs until we could barely stand under the weight. 20-pound loads each. Then we heard it. A door opening. Somewhere on this floor. Not mechanical, manual. A handle turning, a hinge moving. Carla's hand found my arm in the dark kitchen. We didn't breathe. Footsteps, human footsteps. Purposeful, bipedal, even cadence. Not infected. Someone was on this floor. A flashlight beam swept past the cafeteria windows. Then a voice. Male, authoritative, unfamiliar. I know you're in there. I saw your lights in the elevator shaft from the 8th floor. Come out slowly. We don't want trouble. Carla looked at me. We were trapped in a kitchen with 40 pounds of stolen food and no weapon heavier than a pry bar. Coming out, I called. We're not armed. His name was Sergeant First Class Nathan Briggs, National Guard, Oregon 41st Infantry Brigade, or what remained of it. He had 4 soldiers with him, 2 men, 2 women, all armed with M4 carbines. They'd been holding the 8th through 10th floors of our building for 11 days, surviving on vending machine supplies and rainwater collection from a broken window. We didn't know anyone was below us, Briggs said, once the initial tension had resolved into wary conversation. We stood in the cafeteria, headlamps and military flashlights creating overlapping pools of light on the linoleum floor. We assumed the underground levels were compromised. They're not. We've fortified them. How many of you? 9 civilians. He processed this. I watched him calculate. Resources, tactical implications, command dynamics. He was a career soldier in his late 30s, built lean, the face showing 3 weeks of poor nutrition and high stress. His soldiers flanked him in a loose semicircle. Trained positioning, automatic and unconscious. We lost contact with battalion on day 6, he continued. Last orders were to hold position and await extraction. Extraction never came. Radio's been dead for 2 weeks. We've been running autonomous since then. What's your assessment of the situation? City's gone. Bridges are down, blown by military engineers to contain east side spread. Didn't work. Infections on both sides now. Air assets stopped flying over a week ago. If there's a functioning government response somewhere, it's not in Portland. Carla spoke up. What about the floors between us? You're on 8 through 10. We're underground. Floors 1 through 7. 1 through 4 are heavily infested. 5 through 7 appear clear, but we haven't fully secured them. We've been focused on maintaining our position, not expanding. He paused. Didn't have reason to expand. Until now. The implication was clear. We had infrastructure. They had firepower. A merger made tactical sense. But I felt the calculus shifting beneath me. 9 civilians and 5 soldiers created a power dynamic I couldn't control with engineering expertise alone. Briggs had authority, real authority, backed by weapons and military discipline. If his people joined ours, who made decisions? We need to discuss this with our group, I said. Briggs nodded. Understood. But Marcus? He used my name deliberately. I'd given it freely. I now wished I hadn't. Time isn't on anyone's side here. We're running out of food. You apparently have a solution to that. And we have the capability to fully secure the intermediate floors, which protects both our positions. I understand the mutual benefit. Good. Take 24 hours. We'll be here. We return through the elevator shaft, packs heavy with supplies, and heads heavier with implications. When we reached level 4, Dana was waiting. Well? We have food, I said, dropping my pack. Months of it. And there's a military squad living above us. 5 soldiers. They want to merge. The evening meeting was the longest we'd held. 9 people around the camp stove, voices kept to murmurs despite the urgency. Peter argued in favor. More security, more muscle, professional training. David was cautious. Military mindset could override civilian autonomy. Lynn sided with David. Joyce was neutral. Mai didn't speak but watched with eyes that seemed older than 16. Dana was the decisive voice. What happens when the soldier with the gun disagrees with the engineer with the wrench? Who wins that argument? We establish governance before they join, I said. Clear rules, civilian leadership, military advisory role. And if they refuse those terms? Then they stay on the 8th floor and we stay underground. Separate entities, cooperative but independent. Peter shook his head. That's unstable. Proximity without integration creates rivalry. He was right. I knew he was right. But the alternative, absorption into a military hierarchy, meant surrendering everything we'd built. I'll negotiate, I said. Tomorrow. Clear terms. Civilian council with military representation. Democratic decision-making on resource allocation. Military authority only in active combat scenarios. Dana studied my face. And if he says no? Then we have a neighbor, not a partner. The negotiation happened on the 5th floor. Neutral territory. Briggs brought 1 soldier, a woman named Corporal Elena Vasquez. I brought Dana. We sat in the cafeteria we'd raided the night before. Around a table still set for a lunch that was never served. Briggs listened to my terms without interruption. Civilian Governance Council, democratic votes on non-combat matters, military autonomy in defensive operations, shared resources based on contribution, quarantine protocols applied equally to all new arrivals regardless of affiliation. No unilateral decisions by any single person. When I finished, he leaned back. I'm not a dictator, Marcus. I'm a sergeant with 4 tired soldiers who haven't had a hot meal in a week. I'm not interested in taking over your parking garage. I'm interested in not watching my people die. Then you accept the terms. With one modification. In a direct threat scenario, infected breach, hostile approach, structural emergency, I need command authority over tactical response, not governance, not resource allocation, just the immediate life or death calls. Dana spoke. Define direct threat scenario. Briggs looked at Vasquez, who answered. Active infected penetration of defended space, armed hostile contact, fire or structural failure requiring evacuation. Anything requiring coordinated physical response where hesitation costs lives. And once the immediate threat is resolved, Dana pressed. Authority reverts to the Council, Briggs said. Full accountability report. Decisions reviewed, criticism welcome. I looked at Dana. She gave a minimal nod. Agreed, I said. We shook hands across the cafeteria table. That handshake carried more weight than any contract Peter could have drafted. It was a merger of 2 survival philosophies, engineering and military, building and defending, united by the simple mathematics of mutual destruction without cooperation. The integration took 3 days. Briggs and his 4 soldiers relocated from the 8th floor to level 2 of the garage, which we redesignated as the security and defense level. They brought their weapons, their communications equipment, useless now, but maintained with military discipline, and their training. The dynamic shift was immediate. Briggs's people rose earlier, moved with purpose, maintained physical conditioning, even in the confined space. They ran laps on level 4, the most open area, and conducted weapons maintenance with mechanical precision. Our civilians watched with a mixture of admiration and unease. The first real benefit came on day 28, when Briggs proposed and executed a clearing operation on floors 1 through 4 of the building above. His team, augmented by David and myself as load carriers, entered through the elevator shaft in full combat posture. I didn't participate in the violence. I didn't watch. I waited on the 5th floor with Dana and Carla, listening to the sounds that filtered down the stairwell. Brief, controlled, professional. The heavy suppressed reports of military rifles, short bursts, then silence. Briggs emerged from the stairwell 40 minutes later. Floors 1 through 4 clear. 17 infected neutralized. Building is now secure from basement to 10th floor. 17. Living beings, or whatever remained of living beings, eliminated in 40 minutes by 5 trained soldiers moving with precision through darkened corridors. I thought about what that meant. Not morally. I'd made my peace with the necessity of killing infected long ago. But logistically, strategically, we now controlled an entire building, 14 stories of space, 4 underground, 10 above, more than we could possibly need for 14 people. But space wasn't just about living. Space was about capability. Agriculture potential on upper floors with window access, observation posts on the roof, manufacturing space in cleared offices, training areas, medical facilities beyond a corner of a parking level. What now? Carla asked me that evening, as we stood on the 6th floor, looking out at a city darkening under its first sunset without any electric light. The grid had failed completely on day 20. No streetlights, no building illumination, just the orange of sunset giving way to pure black. "Now we build," I said. "Actually build, not just survive." "Build what?" I looked at the outline of the city against the dimming sky. Something that lasts. Day 31. The Council's first real test. Briggs wanted to conduct a supply run to the Safeway 3 blocks east, a grocery store that, if intact, could provide enough food to sustain us indefinitely. The route required crossing open ground, 2 blocks of exposed street, then 1 block of alley approach. In daylight, the street-level infected population was variable, sometimes sparse, sometimes concentrated near sound sources. The council voted. Peter, David, Carla, and Briggs voted in favor. Dana, Lynn, Joyce, and myself voted against. Split decision. The tiebreaker fell to the council's 9th member, a role we'd assigned to whoever held the rotating chair. That week, it was 16 years old, deciding whether 5 adults would risk their lives crossing a dead city for groceries. She didn't hesitate. "Go, but not the way you planned." Briggs raised an eyebrow. "Explain." "I've been watching from the upper floors, the infected on Morrison Street cluster near the intersection. There's a broken fire hydrant that's still running. Water noise attracts them. If you go south 1 block first, then east, you avoid the cluster entirely. Longer route, but clear." The room was silent. A teenager had out-observed trained soldiers and experienced adults because she'd been paying attention while we'd been arguing about governance. Briggs nodded slowly. "Modified route approved. Good work." The supply run launched at 5 a.m. on day 32. Briggs, Vasquez, David, and 1 other soldier, Private Torres, moved as a 4-person unit. I monitored from the 10th floor observation post with binoculars, maintaining visual contact for the first 2 blocks. They followed Mai's route, south on 4th Avenue, then east on Alder. The streets were empty in the pre-dawn gray. Abandoned vehicles, scattered debris. 2 infected visible at the Morrison intersection, standing near the hydrant exactly as Mai had described, drawn to the constant sound of running water. The team reached the Safeway at 5:47 a.m. The building appeared intact, windows unbroken, doors closed. They entered through a service entrance at the rear. I lost visual. 23 minutes later, they emerged, packs full, moving quickly but not running. Something had changed. Their body language was tighter, more controlled. Briggs was gesturing to the team, rapid hand signals I couldn't interpret from distance. They returned at 6:22 a.m. Full packs of canned goods, dried food, medical supplies, batteries, and, critically, a hand-crank emergency radio that still functioned. But Briggs's face when he reached our perimeter told me the supplies weren't the story. "The store wasn't empty," he said, after the team had unloaded and the packs were being inventoried. "There are people there, alive." "How many?" 20 plus. They fortified the back half of the store. Loading dock, warehouse, cold storage. Similar to what you've done here, but less organized. No military support, mostly families. "Did you make contact?" "Brief. A man named Garrett. He's running their group, ex-cop. He was hostile. Told us the supplies in the store were theirs. That we were stealing." "Were we?" "The front half of the store was abandoned, shelves still stocked. They hadn't claimed it, hadn't even barricaded it. They're operating from the back only. So we took from unclaimed territory. That's my assessment. But Garrett didn't agree. He said the whole building was theirs by right of occupation." Dana had been listening. "Does he know where we are?" Briggs hesitated. Torres told him, before I could stop her. She was trying to be diplomatic, explaining we had a settlement, offering trade relations. The temperature in the room dropped. Everyone felt it. Our location was now known to an armed, hostile group 3 blocks away. A group with 20-plus members and an ex-cop with territorial instincts. "Is he a threat?" Peter asked. "Anyone with numbers and motivation is a threat," Briggs replied. "But he didn't follow us. Didn't seem interested in conflict, just marking territory." I wasn't reassured. Territorial instincts escalate, resources deplete, and when they do, the nearest visible alternative becomes a target. "Double the watch rotation," I said, "and seal the ground floor exits, all of them." The radio changed everything, not immediately, not with dramatic revelation or rescue broadcast, but slowly, insidiously, it reshaped our psychological landscape. Carla got it working on day 33. Hand crank powered, she sat on the 10th floor scanning frequencies for hours, mostly static. Dead air across FM and AM bands, emergency broadcast loops that had been cycling since week 1, automated systems repeating outdated information to no one. Then, on day 34, she found something. A short-wave frequency carrying a human voice. Male, calm, reading coordinates. Relief corridor established between mile markers 47 and 62 on Interstate 5 South. Military escort available for civilian convoys departing from designated assembly points. Nearest assembly point to Portland metropolitan area. Salem Fairgrounds. Repeat, Salem Fairgrounds. Corridor operational between 0600 and 1800 daily. Do not travel at night. Do not deviate from marked route. The broadcast repeated on a 15-minute cycle. Automated or live, impossible to determine. But the content was specific, recent, and coherent. Salem, 60 miles south. A functioning military corridor. Evacuation. The council meeting that followed was the most contentious we'd held. The room split along lines I hadn't anticipated. Briggs wanted to go. That's a military broadcast on a military frequency. If there's an active corridor, that means chain of command is intact somewhere. Resources, medical care, organization. Donna opposed. It's 60 miles through unknown territory. We have no vehicles that can navigate blocked roads. On foot, that's a 3-day journey minimum. Exposed, vulnerable, carrying supplies. We have elderly and a teenager. We can't stay here forever, Peter argued. This is survival, not living. If there's infrastructure functioning, real infrastructure, we have an obligation to reach it. Obligation to whom? Lynn asked quietly. My mother-in-law cannot walk 60 miles. Silence. David spoke carefully. What if it's not a choice between everyone going or no one going? What if some go and some stay? The fracture. I felt it open in the room like a crack in load-bearing concrete. The idea that our group, our community, might divide. That some would choose the certainty of our walls over the possibility of rescue. That others would choose hope over security. Splitting weakens both groups, I said. We lose manpower here and create a traveling party too small to defend itself. Then we all go or we all stay, Briggs countered. And I'm not staying. I have orders, even outdated ones. My duty is to reach functioning command authority. Your duty is to the people here, Dana shot back. You agreed to serve the council. I agreed to serve in defensive capacity. This isn't defense. This is strategic relocation. The argument circled for an hour. No resolution. We adjourned without consensus, the first time that had happened. People dispersed to their sleeping areas with tension sitting heavy between them. That night, I found Mai on the 10th floor, watching the dark city through the window. She'd taken to spending time there, our youngest community member drawn to the highest point, looking outward while the adults argued below. "What do you think?" I asked her. "About Salem?" "About all of it." She was quiet for a long time. "I think the radio's telling the truth. But I think the truth was recorded days ago, maybe weeks. And I think 60 miles is a long way when the whole world is broken. So we stay." "I didn't say that." She turned from the window. "I think whatever we decide together. And I think if Sergeant Briggs leaves, he takes the guns with him. And then we're back to a tire iron and a hunting knife." 16 years old. Seeing the strategic reality that adults were obscuring with moral arguments. "You're right," I said. "We can't let the group split." "Then convince him to stay, or convince everyone else to go." I couldn't do either. And on day 36, the decision was made for us. Garrett's people came in the night. Not with violence, not initially. 3 of them appeared at our vehicle ramp barrier at 2 a.m. 2 men and a woman, unarmed, hands raised. Corporal Vasquez spotted them from the level 1 watch position and alerted Briggs, who woke me. By the time I reached the barrier, Briggs had his rifle trained on the trio from behind cover. They stood in the ambient starlight filtering down the ramp, looking small and cold. "We're from the Safeway group," the woman called out. "Garrett sent us. He wants to talk." "Talk about what?" Briggs called back. "Partnership, trade. He has something you want." "We don't need anything from him. He has vehicles, working vehicles, fueled up, 3 of them in the loading dock." The words hung in the air. Vehicles. The one thing standing between us and Salem. The one asset we couldn't manufacture from parking garage infrastructure. I stepped forward. "What does he want in exchange?" "Access to your water system. His group is running out. Fire hydrant supply is contaminated. They've had people getting sick. Water for vehicles. A rational trade. The infrastructure I'd built could support additional draw from the fire suppression system. We had thousands of gallons remaining. The filtration system could be scaled." "We need to discuss it," I said. "Come back tomorrow at—" "He wants an answer tonight. People are sick now." Briggs looked at me. I read his expression clearly. Trap, pressure tactic, urgency designed to bypass careful consideration. "Then some of your people can come here for water tonight," I offered. "Emergency supply. Trade negotiations happen in daylight." The woman conferred with her companions. "He'll accept that. But he's coming himself tomorrow, noon, with a proposal." "Fine, noon." They left. I watched them disappear up the ramp into the dark street above. "I don't like it," Briggs said immediately. "Neither do I. But we need those vehicles. And he needs our water. That makes us equals at the negotiating table. Except he has 20 people and we have 14. Numbers aren't equal." Briggs set his jaw. "Which is why we negotiate from a position of strength. Tomorrow, my team is visible and armed. Full kit. He needs to understand that trading with us isn't the same as taking from us." I agreed. Not happily. The escalation of military posture felt like crossing a line, but pragmatically. Garrett arrived at noon on day 37. Ex-cop, mid-50s. Thick build, clean-shaven, wearing a duty belt that still held a holstered Glock. He brought 2 men. Younger, fit, carrying baseball bats with nails driven through them. He looked at our barrier. at Briggs's soldiers positioned on the level 1 deck with rifles casually but visibly held, at our infrastructure visible beyond the concrete walls. "Impressive," he said. "You've built something real here." "We have. What's your proposal?" "Simple. We merge. My people, your people, one group. This location, your infrastructure, my vehicles and manpower." "Under whose leadership?" He smiled. "Joint, you and me." I studied him. His posture was relaxed, too relaxed, practiced ease, the body language of a man who'd spent decades projecting authority in uncertain situations. Behind his smile, I read calculation. "We have a council system," I said. "Democratic governance, military advisory role for active threats, no individual leadership. That works when you're 14 people in a basement. It doesn't scale." "We're not interested in scaling." "Then you're interested in dying slowly, because 60 miles of road between here and rescue requires organization, resources, decisive leadership. We're aware of the Salem corridor." His expression sharpened. "Then you know what's at stake. Question is whether you want to get there in vehicles, behind armed escort, or on foot with a hunting knife." He had us. He knew he had us. The vehicles were leverage, and leverage determined negotiation outcomes. "We'll discuss your proposal with our council," I said. 24 hours. "You have 12. The council met immediately after Garrett's departure. The divide was no longer about Salem. It was about sovereignty. Garrett's merger proposal wasn't partnership. It was absorption. His joint leadership meant his people outnumbering ours on any vote. His vehicles were a lever, not a gift. Dana articulated it first. He's not offering to join us. He's offering to let us join him, here, in the place we built. His people are sick, Joyce added. Waterborne illness from contaminated hydrant supply. That's his real urgency. The vehicles are bait. The water is what he's desperate for. Then we have more leverage than he's admitting, Carla observed. Briggs was pacing, unusual for him. His tactical position is weaker than he's projecting. 20 people, many of them sick, armed with bats and one service pistol. If this comes to confrontation... It doesn't come to confrontation, I interrupted. We're not killing civilians over a negotiation. I'm not suggesting we do. I'm suggesting we recognize that his aggression is compensatory. He's weak and posturing strength. Peter, who'd been quiet, spoke. What if we counter-propose? We provide water, unlimited access through a controlled distribution point. In exchange, we get 2 of his 3 vehicles, and we maintain complete autonomy. He won't accept, David said. He specifically said joint leadership. Then we let him refuse and see how long his sick people last without water. I looked around the room. The faces I'd grown to know over 5 weeks. Dana's clinical precision, David's measured pragmatism, Carla's analytical clarity, Peter's legalistic framing, Joyce's steady compassion, Briggs's coiled readiness, Mai's watchful silence. We counter-propose, I decided. Water for vehicles. No merger, no joint leadership. We remain independent entities with a trade relationship. I delivered the counter-proposal at the ramp barrier at dawn on day 38. Garrett listened. His face didn't change. That's not acceptable, he said. Then I'm sorry. We can provide emergency water supplies for your sick on humanitarian grounds. No trade required. But the vehicles stay off the table without full trade terms. You'd give us water for free? People are sick. We won't withhold treatment as a bargaining chip. This surprised him. I watched the recalculation happen behind his eyes. We were giving him what he most needed, without demanding anything in return. It dissolved his leverage by removing the urgency from his position. If his people had water, the vehicles became a future negotiation, not an immediate one. Humanitarian water supply, he repeated. And the vehicles? Discussed later, when your people are healthy and we can negotiate without pressure. He stared at me for a long time. Then he laughed, short, genuine, surprised. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Desperation. Everyone's desperate now. You're not. We're prepared. That's different. He accepted the humanitarian water supply. We established a distribution point. 10 gallons per day, delivered to the ramp barrier in sealed containers. His people came each morning, quiet, grateful. Sick ones recovering within days under the clean water regimen Joyce and Dana recommended. The vehicle negotiation happened on day 40, when Garrett's group had stabilized. It was calmer, professional. He gave us one vehicle, a panel van with a full tank, in exchange for permanent water access and an agreement of mutual defense. If either group is attacked, he said, the other responds. Agreed. And Salem, when we're ready, both groups, together or not at all. He nodded. Together, but on your timeline. Your people built something here that deserves respect. I see that now. We shook hands. It wasn't trust, not yet. But it was the framework within which trust could eventually be constructed. Engineering again. Always engineering. Building the conditions for something to become possible. I drove the panel van into Level 1 that afternoon. Our first vehicle acquisition. Our first step toward mobility. Dana touched the hood like it was something sacred. Salem? She asked. When we're ready, I repeated. When is that? I didn't know. But for the first time, the answer wasn't never. Day 40, the day everything collapsed. It didn't come from Garrett. It didn't come from above. It came from below. Carla found it during her morning inspection of the utility tunnel checkpoints. The alarm, our tin can and fishing line system, had been triggered. Cans scattered on the tunnel floor 20 feet from our gate. But nothing visible, nothing waiting. She called me immediately. I arrived with a hunting knife and a flashlight, joined by Briggs with his rifle. We stood at the gate, shining light down the tunnel toward the sealed Morrison basement. The wall, the exterior hatch we'd welded shut. It was buckled inward, not open, not yet, but deformed. Something had hit it from the other side with tremendous force. Repeatedly, the weld points showed stress fractures, metal fatigue visible even from 20 feet away. They're in the utility corridors, Carla whispered. They found the hatch. How many? Unknown. But that steel plate, whatever bent it like that, it wasn't one or two. Briggs was already thinking tactically. We seal our side, permanently. Collapse the tunnel if we have to. If we collapse the tunnel, we lose the Morrison building connection. Better than losing the garage. He was right. I knew he was right. But the Morrison building was our expansion space, our storage, our future agricultural area. Losing it meant constraining ourselves to the garage alone. Give me 4 hours, I said. I can build a secondary barrier inside the tunnel. Steel plate over concrete pour. If the hatch fails, the second barrier holds. And if it doesn't hold, then we collapse the tunnel. 4 hours. I worked with David and Carla, mixing concrete from bags stored in the Morrison basement. Bags we had to retrieve through the tunnel, past the damaged hatch, working with desperate speed. We poured a 4-inch concrete plug across the tunnel floor, then bolted steel plates from car panels against the walls and ceiling. creating a secondary seal 16 feet inside the gate. While we worked, we could hear them, on the other side of the hatch, scraping, hitting. That a rhythmic pounding that never stopped, never slowed, never showed fatigue. How many? 10? 20? The utility corridor beyond, connected to the city's underground infrastructure. Sewers, power tunnels, maintenance access. If the infected had penetrated that network in force, the entire subterranean topology of Portland was compromised. We finished the secondary barrier at 2 p.m. Concrete still wet, but steel plates bolted firmly. I stood back and studied it, calculating load tolerance, failure points, time to breach. It holds against concentrated force for approximately 72 hours, I told Briggs. After that, if they haven't stopped, the steel fatigues and the concrete cracks. 72 hours. That's our window. If they breach the hatch and reach the secondary barrier, we have 3 days to implement a permanent solution. Which is? Controlled demolition. Collapse the tunnel entrance on our side using the propane tank and vehicle fuel. Seal it with rubble. And the Morrison building? Lost. The hatch failed at 11 p.m. that night. We heard it go, a tortured shriek of metal separating from metal. Then the rush of movement in the tunnel beyond our gate. The tin cans rattled again, uselessly. We already knew they were coming. From our gate, flashlights revealed them filling the tunnel. Bodies pressed together in the narrow space, climbing over each other, pushing forward with that mindless persistence that made them unstoppable through patience alone. Dozens. More than I could count in the strobing light. They hit the secondary barrier. Steel rang under the impact. Concrete dust fell from the ceiling. 72 hours, Dana said from behind me. She'd come to see. Everyone had come to see. Start preparations, I told Carla. The demolition option, prep everything. If the barrier shows critical stress before 72 hours, we blow it early. And if they breach before we're ready? I looked at Briggs. He chambered around. Then we hold the line. The next 48 hours existed outside of normal time. A sustained state of emergency that compressed days into moments and stretched seconds into hours. We worked in shifts, constant monitoring of the secondary barrier, constant preparation of the demolition charges, constant vigilance against the impossible noise of bodies slamming against steel in a confined space. Briggs positioned his team at the tunnel junction on level 4, our last line of defense if the barrier failed before demolition was ready. 3 soldiers with rifles in a funnel position, covering the tunnel mouth. Fields of fire overlapping. Military precision serving a purpose none of their training had specifically anticipated. Carla and I prepared the charges. Not explosives. We had none. But concentrated propane from the tank, mixed with gasoline siphoned from vehicles, packed into the tunnel entrance cavity in sealed containers. The ignition system was a car battery and a length of copper wire. When triggered, the fuel would ignite in the confined space, superheating the concrete ceiling and, theoretically, causing catastrophic structural failure. The tunnel would collapse, sealing the breach permanently. The cost? We'd lose the tunnel, the Morrison building connection, and any supplies still stored there. We'd also risk structural damage to our own level 4 if the collapse propagated beyond the tunnel. Can you guarantee it doesn't bring down our ceiling? Dana asked. No, I said honestly. I can calculate the probable blast radius and the structural margins of our own slab. The probability of sympathetic failure is low, maybe 8%. But I can't guarantee 0. 8% chance we kill ourselves to save ourselves. Yes. What's the alternative? The alternative is they breach the barrier, pour into level 4, and overwhelm everything we've built. Then 8% is acceptable. At hour 53, the secondary barrier showed critical stress. A weld point on the upper left steel plate separated, creating a 6-inch gap. Through that gap, we could see them, pressed against the remaining barrier surface, faces distorted by compression, mouths working in that horrible mechanical rhythm. Fingers through the gap, scrabbling at edges, not reaching through far enough to grab anything, not yet. "We blow it now," I said. "Everyone off level 4, Briggs ordered. His voice carried through the garage, the first time any of us had raised our voices in 5 weeks. The sound traveled upward through concrete and steel, and above us, in the building we'd cleared, I heard a response. Movement in upper floors. The infected that remained in the urban landscape beyond our walls, stirring at the vibration. Everyone evacuated to level 3. All 14 of us, 9 civilians, 5 soldiers, gathered at the ramp junction. I held the battery and wire in my hands. The other end was connected to the ignition system inside the tunnel, positioned among the fuel containers. "Fire in the hole," Briggs said. I touched the wire to the terminal. The sound was unlike anything I'd experienced. Not a movie explosion, not a clean detonation. A deep, resonant compression of air, followed by a roar that seemed to come from the earth itself. The floor trembled. Dust cascaded from the ceiling. Emergency lights flickered. Then silence. We waited. 5 minutes. 10. The dust settled. The trembling stopped. Our ceiling held. Level 4 held. The 8% didn't materialize. When we descended to level 4 an hour later, the tunnel entrance was gone. Not sealed, gone. A wall of collapsed concrete and twisted rebar where the opening had been. The blast had done exactly what I'd calculated. Catastrophic failure of the tunnel's ceiling section, dropping several tons of debris into the passage and sealing it with finality. No more sounds from beyond. No more scraping, no more hitting. I placed my palm against the rubble pile. Cool, solid, silent. "It's done," I said. Carla stood beside me. "The Morrison building? Gone, cut off. And the tunnel network?" "Sealed, permanently." She nodded, put her hand on my shoulder. "You saved us." I didn't feel like a savior. I felt like a man who'd amputated a limb to save a body. Necessary, brutal, irreversible. But we were alive, all 14 of us, in a concrete fortress that had just proven it could withstand the worst the dead city could throw at it. Alive, for now, and ready for whatever came next. Day 41. I sit on the 10th floor at dawn, watching Portland exist in its new silence. No traffic, no sirens, no human sound beyond our walls. The panel van is fueled and waiting on level 1. The council voted last night, unanimous. We leave for Salem tomorrow. 41 days in a parking garage. 41 days of concrete and darkness and the sounds of things that used to be people trying to reach us. I came here as an engineer with a building plan. I leave as something else. Something I don't have a word for yet. I thought survival was structural, calculated, a matter of load-bearing walls and water filtration rates. I was wrong. Survival is relational. It's the weight that other people place on you, the trust, the dependence, the obligation to remain human when humanity feels like a luxury. I built a fortress. But the fortress didn't save me. The people inside it did. Dana's clarity, David's warmth, Mai's impossible perception, Briggs's discipline, Carla's brilliance. Tomorrow we drive south. 60 miles of broken road. Whatever waits, we carry this place with us. Not the concrete, but the covenant. We stay together. We stay human. That's the only engineering that matters now.